Hi everyone and welcome to the Josh Ezekiel podcast. Today I'm talking about something every parent has experienced and what other parents want me to dive into a little more in detail, which is shouting and raising your voice at children. We know it all happens, but do we really understand what it does? Not just in the moment of shouting at the child, but to a child's brain, their nervous system, and their long-term emotional health. This episode is about the real impact of raising your voice, how shouting affects children's development, why it happens, and what we can do instead. The goal isn't just perfection, it's awareness, and small changes can make a huge difference. Let's get into it. Firstly, I want to talk about fear and anxiety within the children when parents are shouting. When a parent raises their voice at a child, their nervous system reacts almost instantly. So a child's body will release hormones such as cortisol, adrenaline, and this will trigger their fight or flight response. Now, imagine you being in a situation where someone 3 times your size is suddenly towering over you, starts raising your voice, their face is tense and their body language and their energy is just so overpowering. This can be terrifying for children. Now, for young children, this can be so scary and this can start to ingrain fear into their body. Kids will start to feel like they're walking on eggshells. They will be thinking, when is the next time that my parent shouts at me? When's the next outburst going to come? Some children can become hypervigilant. They're constantly scanning their environment for signs of danger, what's going to happen next, while others may just completely withdraw, shut down emotionally, and just want to protect themselves. Now, imagine that you're a child, you're in the living room, you've got a lovely cup of orange juice, and you accidentally spill it. Now, at this age, you're still figuring out who you are as a child, what's right, what's wrong, and rather than being met with patience or guidance, you have this towering giant that comes over you with this negative confrontation. Why are you always making a mess? Or why have you spilt that on the floor? And in that moment, you're not just reacting to the mess as an adult, but this adult is internalizing fear that your mistakes will bring anger. Not understanding over time, this fear of, oh my God, will lead to anxiety, even in everyday situations. And imagine that happening all the time. And imagine how your body as a child is just going to start to integrate this internal fear every time that you do something so small, like drop orange juice on the floor or do a little doodle on the wall. This kid's still figuring out what they're trying to do in the world. So just imagine how horrible that can be for a child. Shouting at a child won't just affect the child in the moment. It will shape how they see themselves. So children rely on parents, they rely on their caregivers to give them a sense of self-worth. So when you're repeatedly yelled at as a child, then they're going to start believing, I'm bad, I'm always messing up, I'm not good enough, my parents hate me. Now, over time, this is going to lead children and their feelings to feel shame, low confidence, low self-esteem. They might hesitate to express themselves. They're going to fear rejection. They're going to fear criticism. And ironically, that behavior parents want to correct, whether it's listening, acting out, or making mistakes, can actually worsen as that child starts to feel increasingly understood and disconnected from their parents. And ultimately, they're going to start to rebel. I want you to think about a time when you've let someone down. That could be a friend, a sister, someone at work. And imagine, instead of being reassured that they've gone in, they've raised their voices, and they've made you feel small, they've made you feel you're not worthy. And in a way, you can understand it more as an adult because you're able to communicate more effectively. But imagine being a child And hearing that kind of response from a person who's supposed to love you and protect you, it doesn't just hurt them in the moment. It will honestly shape how they see themselves growing up into adulthood. If you keep shouting at children, it's going to have long-term mental health consequences as well. So repeating shouting will have such a damaging effect on their brain, which could lead to an increased risk of depression. So this emotional toll that you're constantly putting these kids through from shouting all the time can lead to a diagnosis in depression. And when we want the best possible outcome for our kids, we don't think about what shouting in that given time and space does. But in the long run, when this child is older, when this child is growing into adulthood and has a diagnosis of depression, has to be put on this medication, we have to think, has this been because I was shouting at them as a child? They will also have aggressive behaviors. So children are going to start to mimic behaviors that they see from parents. If you're constantly shouting at these children are going to start shouting back at you, which is going to make you want to shout back at them. But who's the one to blame? Because if they've been brought up in this environment where mum and dad are constantly just shouting at them, they're just going to repeat exactly what's in front of them, exactly what they're seeing, and exactly what you're doing to them. Shouting at kids will also alter areas of their brain which are responsible for emotional regulation. And this is going to make it very hard for kids to manage these emotions as they're growing up. So we need to take a minute to figure out why we shout. So we have to understand triggers. Adults are often shouting because they feel stressed, or they feel overwhelmed, or they just don't feel in control of a situation that they're in. And this will get deflected onto the child, and this voice will get raised, and lo and behold, this child is being molded into this very broken down, sensitive human, all because of stresses and triggers that we've been going through throughout the day. We also have to be able to regulate our emotional overload. So when we get angry or we get frustrated and we don't know how to express it properly, it just leads to shouting being the instant thing to do. And this is most likely because we were shouted at as children. So we've grown up into adulthood and we're doing exactly the same to our children. So we need to know what these triggers are so that we don't pass down this generational trauma onto the child, letting our children to develop into these humans that are also going to instantly react by shouting at their children. Think about a time when you last shouted. What was it? What's triggered it? Was it your children's behavior? Was it your stress or something else? It could be a very stressful day. You're tired. You brought the kids back home. They're running circles around the house. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it leads you to just shout at him, stop it. Stop running, stop shouting. Take a second. That child is figuring out their internal world, and then they don't see anything wrong in running around. But because you've had a bad day or something wrong has gone, and we're shouting at these children, and then afterwards we go, oh, shouldn't have done that. But in a sense, it's sometimes too late. Because that child's already going to register, okay, I'm running around the house, I've been shouted at, that's negative, so therefore I need to resent this. So now let's talk about how we can shift your reactive shouting to a more mindful way of communication. So in this section, I'm going to speak about self-awareness, emotional regulation, and alternative ways to express frustration in a way that helps rather than harms. Pausing and breathing. Like, the power of just pausing has a huge benefit. It works because when we get triggered, our nervous system activates this stress response. It goes straight to fight or flight, which means that shouting is often an automatic reaction. rather than it being a conscious decision. Pausing gives your brain a chance to just regulate your internal emotions before responding so quick. So there are a few practical strategies. The first is what I like to call the 5-second rule. Before reacting, just count to 5 in your head while you're taking a slow breath in, take a slow breath out, and that just gives you and your mind a quick reset. The second strategy is the grounding technique. Rather than shouting, I want you to stop, I want you to name 5 things that you see, 4 things that you hear, 3 things that you can touch. This will just help to calm your nervous system. And the final effective strategy is step away. Obviously, if it's safe. If the situation isn't urgent, just take a moment away from the child, pop down the hallway, pop into the kitchen, and just say to yourself, I just need a second to think. Let's go back to the whole orange juice situation I was speaking about earlier. Imagine you are exhausted, you've had a long day, and the child's in the living room, it's spilt juice, it's all over the floor, it's on the settee. Instead of immediately just looking at the carpet and thinking, oh, right, I'm going to yell, "Arr!" Just take a deep breath, count down from 5, and remind yourself, it's just orange juice. Your reaction will instantly shape how you feel about mistakes. I now want to move on to recognizing the signs of frustration within yourself before it escalates. Now, it's important because shouting often happens when emotions reach a boiling point. Recognizing early warning signs will give you time to intervene internally before it gets too much. There are signs which we can look out for, which can include your heart rate starts beating faster, your shoulders will tense up, your jaw will get clenched, you'll feel overwhelmed, you'll get irritated by these small things which will just build up, and you're just wanting immediate control over the entire situation. Now, what you can do instead is try and label these emotions. So say them out loud. So say to yourself, I'm feeling really frustrated right now. And this helps to bring your awareness and control and to be able to label yourself, know what you're going through and know how you're feeling. You can also use physical release. So just stretch or shake your hands or step outside or open the window. Just get some fresh air. And this will help to just regulate your emotions by just moving. Alternatively, give yourself a mental cue. Pick a phrase that reminds you to reset, like respond, don't react, or breathe first, speak second. Next, we want to be practicing positive communication. Now, this matters because children model the behavior of their adults. And if they see their adults shouting as a way of expressing their frustration, they are more likely to adopt the same pattern of behavior. So a calm, steady tone can really foster cooperation and also emotional safety. We need to try and switch the way in which we communicate. So rather than shouting at your child and stop that, why have you done that? Stop that right now. These are such negative confrontation. Take the child aside, completely change that sentence over. Try something like, let's take a break, let's sit down, then let's have a chat. Or if you're shouting at them because they're off on one and you're like, listen to me, I need you to listen to me. Again, it's just negative straight up to a kid. So take them aside, lower the tone, and something like, look, I really need you to hear what I'm saying. Can we work this out together? Remember, we're always getting down to the child's eye level when we're speaking. It helps them feel heard. It reduces defiance. And by just switching these sentences completely, keeping the tone down, it'll start to build more of a positive mind space for the child. A strategy that has worked very well for me is creating like a little corner in the nursery or in a house that has an inviting, nice energy, a chair, somewhere that if kids are naughty, we can take them to it. Not for like a naughty corner, but to just sit them down, have a chat with them, get down on their level, and just say, do you want to sit here for a little bit? Here's a book. I just want you to sit here, calm down. I'll come over in a minute and we can speak about what's going through your head. So change doesn't happen overnight and no parent is perfect. The fact that you're here learning and reflecting just shows how much you care. Breaking this cycle of shouting will take patience, it'll take practice and self-compassion, but it is possible. Small changes can lead to a calmer, more connected home for both you and the family. Now, if this episode has resonated with you, please do take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, or just share it with someone who just might need to hear it. Every parent deserves support, and together I just want to create a healthier space for the next generation of children to grow. Thanks again for listening. It's still early on in this podcast. I'm so excited to get some more episodes churned out. I am looking to interview some more people as well, so that's going to be really exciting. But if you've got any topics that you want to talk about, then please do hit me up and let me know and we'll get that covered. Stay safe, everyone, and we'll see you next week on the Josh Ezekiel podcast.